As someone who proudly identifies as a little neurospicy, I wanna begin by naming something that often gets tangled together during Mental Health Awareness Month. Many tend to lump mental health conditions and neurodiversity in the same category as if they're interchangeable, but they're not. And understanding this difference can be quite liberating. Did y'all know that neurodiversity is really a biological reality? I see some head nods and some like, I don't know. So the term was popularized by Judy Singer, an Australian sociologist who helped people imagine human brains in the same way that we think about ecosystems. She teaches that like biodiversity makes forests healthy and resilient, neurodiversity makes humanity stronger. She goes on to say that a forest with only one kind of tree is fragile, but a forest with different root systems, with different relationships to sunlight, rain, and soil, that kind of forest can survive storms, it can regenerate after fires, it can keep on living. That's what neurodiversity means. Human minds are different by design. In the manifesto that was shared earlier, things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia are all different ways of processing information, emotion, sound, time, relationships, and movement. These are neurological differences, not moral failures, not character flaws, not signs that anybody is broken. Yes, amen, amen, amen. And really, the truth is that there is really no such thing as normal. Can y'all say that with me? There is no such thing as normal. Yes, I love hearing the shouts of that. Truly, there are really just different ways of processing information, different nervous systems moving through the world in different ways. Now, mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, PTSD, trauma responses, those are different. They can absolutely overlap with neurodiversity, but they are not the same thing. Mental health challenges often involve suffering, distress, or a disruption that maybe treatment might need. Support, you might need medication or therapy or community care or all of the above. But being neurodivergent is not automatically a crisis. Sometimes what people need is not fixing. Sometimes we just need accommodations. Sometimes we just need understanding. Sometimes we just need a little breathing room. Breathing room in a world that wasn't designed around only one way of thinking, of communicating, or existing. There is this scholar that is named Miriam Akund who writes about decolonizing neurodiversity. In plain language, she's asking us to stop treating difference like it's a deficiency. She invites us to honor the whispering child, the non-linear artist, the quiet thinker, to move beyond tolerance into reverence. You know, there's a difference between those things. Y'all know, like, tolerance says, all right, I guess I'll put up with you, I guess. Reverence, on the other hand, says, you know, you carry a wisdom that I just might need. That distinction, that shift, it matters because long before there were children's books with stories with sparkle brains or cute language like Neurospicy, I knew what it was like to be one of those kids who moved through the world differently. I was the kid who felt everything so deeply, but I didn't always have words for it. I was the kid called overly sensitive, smart but a bit distracted, emotionally intense sometimes, labeled too much. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yeah, I'm in a good crowd. And I'll say that for myself, after getting in trouble enough times, I learned what a lot of us have learned: how to mask, how to perform a version of normal that makes other people comfortable. Honestly, a part of the reason why I joined the military was because I thought that maybe some structure could train me into becoming the version of myself that the world seemed to reward. And for a long time, I got really good at performing functionality, very good at discipline, very good at survival. What I didn't understand then was how exhausting it is to constantly have to translate yourself for environments that were never built with you in mind. That exhaustion is labor. It costs something to live behind a mask, a bit disconnected from yourself. For me, it wasn't a surprise when depression came. At first, I thought I understood why. I thought maybe it was the pressure of trying not to be queer. That didn't work. And then I thought it was the pressures of hiding behind don't ask, don't tell when I was in the military. And then I thought that maybe it was the moral injuries of the military life. And then I thought maybe it's the global grief and then the activist burnout and then carrying too many stories of injustice in one mind and nervous system. But truly, it was all of those things. And it was also something deeper than that. It was the years of chronic stress, years of overriding what my body was trying to tell me, years of trying to survive by pretending I wasn't affected by what was truly affecting me. Eventually, my nervous system and mind was like, enough. You cannot keep doing this. We cannot keep masking. We cannot keep pretending that this isn't costing something. So years after active duty, I received a PTSD diagnosis. And strangely enough, I felt relief. Maybe some of y'all know that feeling, maybe not being diagnosed with PTSD, but the relief of realizing, oh, this is a thing. This isn't just me. Now, not everybody needs a diagnosis to understand themselves, but for me, having this particular language, it mattered. It helped me understand why certain sounds, certain tensions or dynamics could pull my body into survival mode before my mind could even catch up. And I share all of this because mental health awareness can't stay abstract. It cannot just live in the statistics and awareness ribbons and social media graphics and people that live out there. It has to be a testimony. And so here's mine. I'm a minister, I'm an experienced, qualified chaplain, someone who from the outside often looks like I'm holding it all together. And for the most part, I thankfully am. I thankfully have been keeping it together. But I have also lived inside the wreckage of an overwhelmed nervous system and had to slowly find my way back to my true, authentic self. And what helped me on this healing journey was not pretending to be neurotypical. It wasn't the shame of forcing myself into somebody else's mold, none of that. What helped me to heal, and is still helping me heal, is truth-telling in community. It's real rest. It's finding somatic therapy. It's meditation and other spiritual practices like full belly laughter, which y'all see me do quite often. It's also having emotional and professional boundaries, sometimes medication when needed, and friends who can hold all of me at once. The weary parts and the wiry parts, the hopeful parts and the hurt. So, if you're sitting here today carrying a story that feels heavy, whether it sounds like mine or nothing at all like mine, I hope that you can hear this clearly. Your struggles, whatever they may be, are real. Your need for support is real. Your mind is not a moral failure. Truly, we are living in these times of what Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis once called these times of unholy oppression. And this is relevant because John Lewis knew something about systems that try to crush the human spirit. He spent his life organizing, marching, and legislating for dignity, for voting rights, and for freedom. And one of the ways that oppression works is by convincing people that our differences make us disposable. Systems that were never built for all of us try to pathologize us instead. They tell us that your mind is wrong, the way that you grieve is wrong, your needs are wrong, but I want to share something that pushes back against that lie. There's this book, Stubborn Grace, Faith, Mental Illness, and Demanding a Blessing. In it, we are reminded you are loved beyond your wildest imaginings by the Spirit of creation. Every bit of you, each of you is holy, even the embarrassing parts, even the thoughts that maybe you wouldn't even tell your best friend. Every bit of you is holy. Not just the polished parts, not just the parts that come to church on Sunday morning, not just the parts that can answer emails or maybe forget to answer emails, and not just the parts that can smile through pain and keep the calendar moving. Every bit is holy. And just so I can say it, because you can't see this shirt, it says you are more than enough, period. Period. Can y'all say it with me? We are more than enough. Period. That part. And the book that I mentioned goes on to remind us that the divine is in every cell of our beings, calling us to live loving and joyful, boisterous lives. I love that, unapologetically so. Calling us to go easier on ourselves, to accept that truly we are the blessing. Calling us to remember that there is no original sin in us, that we are in fact glorious gifts to the world that desperately needs all of our ways of sparkling. You are worthy. We are worthy. Can y'all say that with me? We are worthy. Yes. This is not just a nice affirmation. This is a part of the spiritual resistance. And disability justice has been teaching us this for a very long time. There's this writer and organizer, Leah Lakshmi Pepsna Samarsina, who is known for their poetry and work with Sin's Invalid and Crip Camp. These are documentaries that if you haven't heard of, you want to check them out. And in them, they remind us that justice was shaped largely by disabled, queer, trans, and black and brown people who understood something deeply spiritual. And that's that survival requires a collective imagination. We need everybody coming to the table. Disabled people have had to become innovators because they had to be. They have learned to build care networks and invent ways of surviving. They learn interdependence in a world that has been obsessed with independence. And then some of us have heard of Joy Harjo, a Muskogee poet and former U.S. Poet Laureate who teaches through poetry and indigenous wisdom that storytelling itself can be a healing medicine. That's when we tell the truth about our lives and when somebody lovingly witnesses it. In that time, this healing happens when something in us can begin to be knit back together, just in the witnessing. And that's what I hope that church can be for so many of us. There's another book called Held, Showing Up for Each Other's mental health. And in it, there's this story about Dr. Mark Reagan's, a psychiatrist who worked in an integrated mental health clinic, a mental health service agency in Long Beach, California. It was called The Village. In The Village, it became known the village became known for helping people facing some of the hardest situations, things like homelessness and schizophrenia, substance use, and deep psychiatric distress. Dr. Reagan says that when he helped these psychiatric patients who were doing well, he wondered what helped them most, and they did not usually point to clinical intervention. What they said helped them most are the moments of human connection. Moments when somebody believed in them. Moments when somebody saw their pain, when somebody cared and did not give up. The book also said sometimes when they gave bus fare to help them, knowing that the doctor didn't need to do that, but just these little ways of care. In other words, he found that healing often happens through ordinary human kindness. And this is where the faith community comes in. Dr. Reagan said that people of faith have this extraordinary ability to be experts in human kindness. I think that we can be experts in human kindness, that we can believe in people when they cannot yet believe in themselves. This is what faith communities can do. We can see something sacred in people when they cannot yet see it in themselves. We can offer acceptance and a covenantal love. Now, he didn't say this, but I'm adding a covenantal love, even when illness is untreated, even when life is messy, even when hope feels far away. And shout out to our Healthy Relations Committee that helps us with this covenantal love, because it's those acts of kindness that are central to recovery. That's why activist and author Adrienne Maree Brown gives this powerful reminder when she says, it is healing that is the victory. Not perfection or pretending behind a mask, healing as learning how to live in our bodies. Again, that is a victory. Healing as deciding, I will love myself, I will love others, I will believe that this love can heal the world. Believing that is the victory, because healing, it doesn't happen in isolation. Healing happens when somebody says, you don't have to hide who you are. You don't have to perform normal here. Healing happens when we look at someone and says, you deserve care as you are here right now. That's why reclaiming our minds is sacred work. It means rejecting the lie that our worth depends on how productive or how polished or how emotionally regulated or socially acceptable we appear. Healing means building families, building churches, school, workplaces, communities that make room for actual human beings, messy human beings, brilliant human beings, overwhelmed human beings, different human beings. And that reclamation starts with mercy and compassion, not just for other people, though that too, yes, but mercy and compassion first for yourself. Notice perhaps where you might have internalized shame about the way your mind works, internalized shame about forgetting some things, internalized shame about any differences in the way that you think. Notice where you might have mistaken difference for deficiency. Notice where you've apologized for needing what you need. And then offer yourself grace and gentleness instead. Tell yourself, my mind is not a machine. Instead, my mind is a landscape. Like spring, sometimes I'm mentally blooming. And some seasons, things fall away like leaves in autumn. Some seasons, my mind needs winter's rest energy. And some seasons are for storm survival. All of these seasons belong in this beautiful mind, this beautiful landscape of a mind that we have. And then I invite you to practice that same mercy with each other. When somebody arrives feeling weary, maybe we don't demand that they give us the wired, alive energy. When somebody arrives, maybe non-neurotypical, we don't gotta demand normalcy and a linear way of being. When someone arrives still healing, we don't gotta rush to find resolution. We can instead offer presence, offer room, just offer care. Because healing is not just individual work, it is collective work. When we heal each other by refusing to abandon each other, and maybe that's why our closing song matters so much today. You gotta do when the Spirit says do, because the Spirit keeps calling us towards life, towards honesty and care, towards joy and rest, towards laughter and liberation. Sometimes the Spirit says, sing about the pain until the song becomes released. Sometimes the Spirit says, dance and let the trauma move from your hips out of your head. Sometimes the Spirit says, shout and grieve and cry. And sometimes the Spirit says, stop hiding, beloved, and let somebody help you. So may we become brave enough to do what our minds need and what our spirit says do. May we build communities where different minds and different bodies are not merely tolerated, but cherished. May we practice the sacred work of mental and spiritual restoration together. And when the Spirit says love, may we love so fiercely. And when the Spirit says rest, may we rest unapologetically. And when the Spirit says heal, may we heal together. Amen.